listeners out there in podcast land. Welcome once again to the Hubgrass. On the Hubgrass, here we are. I am your host, Mason Betterly, joined as always by my co-host, Matt Arterberry. Always bringing you the best in Disney-related content. Always asking the questions that nobody thinks to ask. For instance, Jessica Rabbit and Roger Rabbit. Would they have rabbit-like human children or human-like rabbit children? This kept me up late last night, and I wanted to put it to you. What do you think on that?
I think they'd probably just have human-like children, like maybe like a furry, like they're like human-like, but with
Like Lola, because I was thinking
heads.
Lola Rabbit or Lola Bunny or whatever.
Yeah, Lola Bunny,
Which I know is kind of,
probably closer to that.
I know that's Warner Brothers, of course, but
Yeah. Well, her physiology is very similar to Roger, I think, a little bit, right?
well, I mean they're rabbits, so
How well, yeah. Well, I know. So like I think there'd be a little more melding of the two species than just a straight humanoid rabbit.
it would be scary.
Maybe I don't
It
know.
would be scary.
It'd be very odd.
Hey, did
Very
you
odd.
know? Zendaya is playing Lola Bunny in the new Space Jam movie?
I did, and the way they're marketing it is very sad because it's like we only care about Zendaya, and like what about like all these like classic voice actors that are voicing these original character or these classic characters? What the heck?
Yeah, it's really weird, and it's like the one ad that specifically showcases that is really, yeah, it's really bad because it
Yeah,
cuts to like
yeah.
stock footage of her at like some red carpet event. It's like what back alley company did you get to
Yeah.
market this? And then I have another
Do you plan to watch that movie?
what?
Do you plan to watch that movie on
You know,
like
you
day
don't
one?
plan on watching a car accident, but you do see one every now and then. So
Yeah.
probably. I have HBO. I think it's out on going to be out on HBO Max. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty. If it does that, I'll definitely check it out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if not, then not. I'll just wait until it pops up wherever. Because I mean, I'm interested to see how they're doing weird things in the film. So why
Mm-hmm.
are we
Very
promoting
weird.
something Warner Brothers on a Disney podcast? Is the question. You see, everything's been
Yeah.
out of whack since they started tearing down Toontown. You know, it's all that
Oh
Toontown
yes.
politics. Um,
That is very sad. I've seen some footage and video and photos and stuff. I'm like, oh, too
I
much.
saw somebody post the footage on Twitter, and they were like, at least put some googly eyes on the equipment as it's tearing everything
Yeah.
down. Put it on the tractor. Or whatever.
I yeah. I just think like Chapek's in his office, just like have you seen? Like, I'm sure you've seen Last Jedi, the Star Wars Last Jedi. That meme of Kylo Ren being like more, and so Chapek's just like tear it all down.
Yeah, yeah, I don't have a very high opinion.
Yeah.
I saw him giving an interview, um, related to, and I don't want to go too far into
Don't
it.
get me
But
started.
what?
Don't get me started.
All right,
Don't
I
get me
think you know. I
started.
think you know what I'm gonna talk about. But I was just thinking. But ironically, I thought of a different scene from, or a different quote from The Last Jedi, and I was just thinking like, amazing. Everything you just said was wrong. Because he was just like he's just entirely
He's
misinformed
stupid.
about things, and
Yes.
it's
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 shocking how much he's
shocking.
misinformed.
It's possibly shameful. I don't know. I don't know.
Yes.
But anyway, on to the main topic for today. The main thing, unless you had some shocking new news that came out within the last couple days.
the only thing I'm really hyped about is Casey's Corner is finally opening up.
Heard
Which
this, yes.
I'm pumped.
Well,
I'm pumped.
they just announced Trader Sam's is going to be opening up soon. Well, at least Disneyland's. I haven't heard about Florida, but I
Oh,
heard
okay.
Disneyland's Trader Sam's opening back up soon.
That's exciting.
And they did make a minor change to the menu. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
They have changed the name of the shrunken zombie head to just the zombie.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
shrunken is now offensive. Interesting.
Interesting. Well, and
No,
then
yeah.
yeah, it's I don't care really, but it's just weird. I'm like, okay, it's. I mean, if you're gonna, I guess if you want to.
Well, I know, my fear was we're gonna walk into either one. It's going to be blank walls and empty shelves at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad it's reopening. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Trader Sam's, and I'm excited to get back in there sometime soon. It is a cramped space, so I understand why they've held, especially
Yeah.
especially the Disney World one. I understand why they've held off on that, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. Um, but jumping over to the main topic of our episode, we wanted to try something new. And so we have concocted the idea of an extinct safari. So we are going to be exploring the history of a Disney attraction that is unfortunately no longer with us. We hope to make this an ongoing series as part of our show. We like to try and mix up the formula every now and then. So today we are starting our very first inaugural extinct safari with the much beloved, the much feared, the much complained about by angry moms, the one and only Alien Encounter, extraterrestrial. Or is it flipped around? Because I never know if it's extraterrestrial : Alien Encounter, or Alien Encounter : extraterrestrial, or just Alien Encounter, a Spider-Man adventure. I don't know. I don't know how they particularly go about that, but it has a lush history. Spans quite a few years, and then of course it was open technically from December 1994 to 2003, and then famously it was switched over at that point to Stitch's Great Escape. And I have a lot of notes on this. I did a whole, like yesterday morning, I was in a fury taking notes down. And then, of course, Stitch's Great Escape went to seasonal operation in 2016. And then as of like 2018, it's dead. So, yeah. So, but yeah, did you ever get a chance to experience Alien Encounter?
So, I was in the parks when Alien Encounter was still available.
It was operational, yeah.
Yeah, because the last was 03, and that was around my second trip to Disney. It was actually, I think it was that falls when it closed was my second trip to Disney.
Yeah.
I was a little baby boy. I in the sense that like I was pretty easily frightened as a child, and didn't really care for many intense things like scary imagery and things like that. So I knew from a very young age that I was not going to ride this ride. And I remember walking through Tomorrowland and seeing the sign. The sign was very ominous and was very
Absolutely.
It was very different from the rest of was very different from the rest of the Tomorrowland. It seemed very out of place to me, and it definitely felt, like I said, menacing and sinister. So I was like, I'm just going to ride Buzz Lightyear, and we're going to have fun over there. But yeah, I was not about to ride Alien Encounter as a young child. I did ride Stitch once. So I do have some experience with Stitch, but I never took the leap and hopped into that theater in the round while the alien was involved.
Yeah. So, I, I, I had, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, but, my parents really were very pro me trying the ride. I don't know if that was
Okay.
they liked seeing me terrified, or they just wanted to push me to be brave or something. I don't really know.
Sure.
Um, but I did go on. I guess it was around 2000 or so. Um, and I did experience it, and I got a bravery pin out of it, for being, a brave kid and stuff. Uh, but yeah, it was definitely an experience. It was definitely terrifying. But the thing is, you don't really, it's weird because you're sitting down, and I was thinking about this, when went on to Stitch's Great Escape, because I can't help but think about the original
Hmm.
when I go on there.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess it was the last time I was on. I was like, it's interesting. You get so frightened on this ride, and they really do such
Hmm.
an amazing. Or you did get so frightened on this ride, and you're just sitting there. It's not even like you're moving. You're staying
Yeah.
completely stationary. Um, and so that's a crazy thing. But um, I did get into a lot of the history on this attraction. Um,
Hmm.
and did you know, like, the crazy star-studded cast, like, we started out with this ride? It's insane.
Well, yeah, because I know that the original the voice of the robot in the pre-show was a very famous SNL
Yes.
actor, and he actually got cut like after 6 weeks of operation, where they brought in a new voice actor to voice him. I
It
forget
was
who it
Tim
is off the
Curry.
top of
It
my
was
head.
Tim Curry.
Yeah, yeah, Tim Curry, because there was a big disconnect between the pre-show and the actual show itself.
Yeah.
So they after 6 weeks of operation, after 6 weeks of opening, they decided to take like a 3 to 4 month. I think it was maybe 3 to 6 month
Yeah, I think it was 6 months.
closure. Yeah, closure on top of that to totally retheme the pre-show, so you felt like it was going to be a scary ride, even from the pre-show, because that was a big problem with guest response at the commencement of the ride, is that the pre-show is very comical and humorous, and then you walk in and there's blood splattering
Yeah.
everywhere. So, uh, um, do you want to hop into like what actually happened in the ride first, real quick, just so people
Oh,
have sort of
absolutely.
an idea?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll give everybody an overview of kind of how the ride went.
Cool.
So how it originally started with, was at the time with their revamp of Tomorrowland. It was the Tomorrowland Convention Center, and it was taken over by XS Tech, or they were hosting there. And the show was kind of set up in three parts. And so the first part being basically while you're in line or in the first main room, you have a video presentation, which is from Access Tech, which is talking about how, the uh, just all of the advancements they're making in technology and stuff, and they want to bring someone using their new teleporter machine, um, across the galaxy or whatever over to them
Hmm.
to show. And that is actually it blew my mind when I found this out, but it was hosted by Tyra Banks in this ridiculous green alien makeup, and Jeff
Oh,
Jones, who people might know
yeah.
from uh, a lot of '80s movies, but namely Beetlejuice, um, or Amadeus. If you've seen Amadeus, I know that's actually more of a fringe one, but I really like that movie. But yeah, he's the dad in
Or or
Beetlejuice.
or Ferris Bueller.
What was that?
Or Ferris Bueller.
Yes, Ferris. Oh my gosh, yeah, the principal in Ferris Bueller, of course.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so he was very prominent at the time there. So, 1994, it makes sense that he'd be showing up. Um, but so yeah, so he's like the president. I think President Clench, I think was his name,
Hmm.
and
Chairman.
he was, just sort of. He seems very pompous, and I think the motto for their company, Excess Tech, is if it can't be done with excess, then it shouldn't be done at all. Which I kind of love the wordplay on that. Um,
Yeah.
but then from there, you're brought into a pre-show, the or a second pre-show, which is um, with Scruff or Skippy, which I love Skippy.
Hmm.
Skippy was this little alien
Yeah.
that was in the show, and he was just this cute, cuddly little thing. And to this day, I want a Skippy stuffed animal. I I've always wanted one. I don't know why.
They're out
Oh,
there.
oh, I know. Oh, I know. But I just haven't been able to get my hands on one. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so Skippy is in one tube, and I guess in the main version of Alien Encounter, Tim Curry played Sir, which was simulated intelligence robot, and he
Hmm.
basically tortures Skippy by sending him back and forth, but like I think knowingly incorrectly, so that it burns him, and it's really sick. And I know I realized that they did that to make people uncomfortable, so that if children weren't going to be able to do that, then they're definitely not going to be able to do the
Hmm.
show, and kind of weed them out. Because the interesting thing that I heard while I was researching this was, of course, a lot of people know that the idea was originally going to be that it was the alien or the xenomorph from
Hmm.
Aliens,
Hmm.
because Michael Eisner wanted more intense attractions in the park. Um,
Hmm.
and he wanted to bring that in, but like some of the older Imagineers were like, absolutely not. And so they talked
Yeah.
to George Lucas, who
Hmm.
was kind of helping out on this project. Originally, uh, the closer they got to the actual ride, he got further and further from the project, because he was actually focusing more on, I think, the Indiana Jones ride in Disneyland. But
Correct.
he
Yeah.
went in and, at the behest of these Imagineers, sort of dissuaded um, uh, Michael Eisner from using the xenomorph. So
Hmm.
but the idea that the younger Imagineers wanted behind that was, if you know it's the xenomorph, you know that it's going to be for adults, and you're not going to bring your kid in. If you don't have that
Hmm.
brand awareness kind of deterring you from the get go, you're going to bring your
Yeah.
kids in. So it was sort of a built in deterrent,
Yeah.
initially. But when they didn't have that, after the initial 6 weeks, um, with all those complaints and all that tweaking and stuff they had to do, they had to figure out a new way to deter little children from going into the show. So it was by making making the robot in the opening with Skippy a little more rough and cruel and a little more
Yeah.
ominous.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is, from what I understand, is that shortly after that, upon the second opening of the ride, the reopening of the ride, there was a sign outside that said, if like kids 12 and under shouldn't ride this
Yeah.
ride. So they're very explicit, and obviously you could easily walk past one of those A-frame signs and not read it and kind of ignore it. But as a parent, I feel like I would be very like, there's aliens. I have a young kid. It could be fun. It could be scary. And then I would kind of look around for signage to see like if there's a height requirement and things like that. And if I would see that sign, I'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't walk in here. But for parents still to go forward and put their kids on this ride, even though there's like a very explicit bit of signage that said like you shouldn't do this, and also I think the ambience around the ride in general, even like that sign is very like sinister and
Oh yeah.
and foreboding, and for parents kind of like, oh, like whatever, no problem, like we'll just go for it. Well, it's Disney, and I think that was the reasoning behind George getting involved, but also those older Imagineers getting involved, saying like, hey, this is Disney, and maybe trying to like make your kids and like your guests like pee their pants in fear and like have them cry as they're exiting the ride maybe isn't the best idea in the most magical place on earth.
But at the same
And
time,
I
I think it's all right to have, some of those more intense attractions. I am definitely, I'm very pro Alien Encounter. I think,
okay.
especially in Magic Kingdom, parents probably are after, the fifth, well, because, I mean, considering when it was in the park, you had a couple more darker, like, fairy tale dark rides and stuff like that. I think, one attraction there that's specifically, a thrill ride for adults, I don't think is too bad. And
Yeah, that's fair.
I hate. The more I think about it, the more I hate Tomorrowland, just because of how dead it is. Like, especially now, because now there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there, and I don't know if the laugh floor is open again, but that's kind of
Not
a
yet.
dud attraction. Like, I enjoy it, but it's a dud. And you have
Yeah.
Space Ranger Spin, which is okay. Then Carousel of Progress and People Mover, which are both, I don't know, they're war horses. So I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with them. And then, Space Mountain, and it's just sort of the whole land right now is just so and
Yeah, and now we have Tron coming in, so
okay. Don't hold your breath.
no, no, I know, and I was doing do some research as well before the show, and the one thing I think Alien Encounter would have made sense if they would have continued on with this kind of refurbishment and retheming of Tomorrowland, where they're really pushing this idea of a spaceport, and like XS was this new company in the spaceport, and they're trying to bring new technology to Earth and things like that. But it was never like a commitment across the entire rest of the land. I know that you kind of get a little bit of that spaceport vibe in the People Mover and some of the commentary in Space Mountain, things like that. But it wasn't a full commitment across the entire breadth of Tomorrowland. And one thing I found interesting was as I was reading about the Alien theming, is that prior to them doing this Theater in the Round ride, they were looking at putting in a kind of Space Ranger spin style ride, or a la Men in Black, where you were actually going to be hunting down xenomorphs, like in the second Aliens movie, on the Nostromo, which is the ship in the Aliens franchise, which I think that would have been still intense, but also a fun way to go about it. Versus, and we'll get into the actual meat and potatoes of the actual experience of the ride, which I think that might have been a easier thing to do. And I think they felt somewhat confident of using the Aliens characters because they were already in the Great Movie Ride at that point.
Yeah.
With the Ripley and the Xenomorph scene in the Great Movie Ride. So it made sense, but I thought, for me, I don't like to have too many IP spread across multiple parks. I think if you want to have an IP in a park, then that's their park. And the one reason why I struggle with Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, I really enjoy that ride. Buzz is one of my favorite characters in the whole Disney canon, so I like that he has his ride, and I love Zurg and things like that. So I'm happy to see them, but it's kind of odd that Buzz is in Tomorrowland and the rest of the characters and their rides are in Universal, or not Universal, but Studios. So
we'd have a problem if they were in Universal. There's
they
already have
you
know, Marvel there. You can't double dip like that, or triple dip.
Yeah,
Simpsons.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other can of worms there. But I think it's odd that they. I don't know. The reason they took the Xenomorph out was because they thought it'd be too scary. But I feel like the way they laid about the ride itself was also like equally frightening. So and that's where I struggle with like Lucas saying like, oh, we like not have such a scary ride, but they still came up with this large winged alien to.
Do you think the attraction would have lasted longer if it was in Hollywood Studios or MGM at the time?
No, I definitely think it would have, because Studios has more adult oriented rides. Obviously, we have Tower of Terror, we have Rock and Roller Coaster. It would have fit within that theming a little bit more of like bringing you into the movies. And if they did use the Xenomorph, I think that would have been a lot more fitting than bring into the more family friendly Magic Kingdom Tomorrowland. And I have no problem with there being a presence of like an alien attack happening in this spaceport. And I think that's why more of a Space Ranger Spin Men in Black style ride would make more sense in Magic Kingdom, because it's like you're not in direct contact with the alien, where you're like, it's in a distance and you're like on this adventure trying to save the spaceport, where in this ride you're part of the experiment, which is even more kind of sadistic and dark, and I think that, like I said, would have fit better in MGM at the time than it would in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. Honestly, I wouldn't. Well, we still have a lot to get through with this kind of overview.
Yeah.
So before I give my thoughts on that, let's just jump back in really quick. So yeah, you have the video exposition, if you will, trying to set up the idea of what Access Tech is, the technology you're about to see, which I feel that itself is very Tomorrowlandy, like, ooh, the technology of the future, so I don't have an issue with that.
No.
All right. I don't think that conflicts at all.
No, not at all.
But so then you get brought in. So yeah, Phil Hartman originally was Sir, and it was a bit more comical. But yeah, so once they revamped,
well, his name is actually Tom at the time.
Really, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom 2000 was his original name.
All right. But yeah, I love Phil Hartman. So unfortunately, I never got to experience that version. But I can imagine that was kind of fun. But then, yeah, you have Tim Curry, which is a bit more ominous, foreboding. Also, I rewatched the show that he like the bit he does, because you can still watch the whole thing on YouTube, but it's just a little difficult
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, after
Yeah.
this, it's just pretty much a video of pitch black and hearing people scream. But for this part, I had to like do a double take on it because he murders Skippy. Like he straight up murders Skippy at the end. He leaves.
He does.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. To my perception, to how I saw it, I'm like, did he just straight up murder Skippy? Because what you have to do is you have to basically, and I guess scientifically, I guess this is the idea of teleportation. It disintegrates your original form, and then he presses some buttons, and then it's sort of like he's transmitting in the air or whatever, and then he turns on the receiver and puts it back together. But he just left him hanging in limbo. He never put him back together. He sent him back. He sent him over
Oh.
one time, burnt him to a crisp, and then
Mm-hmm.
sent him back and just didn't turn his landing spot or whatever on. So he's just left in limbo.
Hmm.
So
I didn't realize that.
yeah, I was like, dang.
Bizarre.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, because I have a note here, or I have one note here about it, and I was like, Skippy murdered. And yeah, so um but yeah, from there we go in from the pre-shows into the main room of the attraction. And the thing that's very interesting about this is the attraction was originally Mission to Mars. This, replaced it in Magic Kingdom. This attraction was going to replace the original Mission to Mars in Disneyland as well. But once they got this reception that they did, they, put that on pause indefinitely, and we got Pizza Port. And apparently you still see some of the initial work they were working towards because they were going to do another overhaul there for Tomorrowland 2055, which is shockingly
Mm-hmm.
closer than 1994 now. So sleep on that. Um,
Yeah.
or or just as close or something. I don't know. Um, I saw something that was like saying, we're closer to the 100th anniversary of Disneyland than the Cake Castle. Um, so
Oh.
anyway, so they got Pizza Port instead in the end. But the idea behind the Mission to Mars attraction was it was a circular theater, and everyone was facing the center. So one of the benefits or the things that was alluring was you could keep that theater set up for this attraction. You're just putting the teleportation device in the center, as opposed to the screen that I guess everyone looked through it. For the attraction. So you have this big cylindrical device at the center of the room with all this machinery coming off of it. And then you sit down in your seats, all facing it, and these big arms come down, which they were the same when Stitch was there. So if you're familiar with Stitch, it's just the same. But then the TVs come on, and Jeff Jones' character, President Clench, comes on, and he says it'll be better for me to come and meet all of you than just one of you to come all the way over here halfway across the universe to see all this technology. So the technicians are like, no, we didn't do the calculations for that. We're not prepared for that. He said, no, just do it anyway. Just get it ready. And his last words on the video are, prepare for an unforgettable encounter, which I love. Um, so you get locked in place, which comes into play with certain effects, and then the way I seem to understand it going is they send President Clench accidentally to the wrong planet, and then they're like, "No, get him back," and then they grab him and send him to you, but then they realize that he is still on the planet, or either that or he's dead. I'm pretty sure, regardless, he's dead. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. My understanding of how it worked is that so yeah they're trying to transport him to Earth, and either it was they sent him to they sent him to the wrong planet, and they were unable to find him to grab him and pull him back to Earth, and so they found like they located a life form, and so to make sure they did it quickly and like could keep their jobs, they just grabbed that life form that they had already picked up on their scanner and then just like pulled it over to Earth, and so mistakenly that life form they actually grabbed was actually this alien instead of it being Chairman Clench.
yeah. So in my mind, either before they grab him or maybe the creature gets him, or maybe there are other of that
That's
creature
also true.
that are still on the planet that he's on, and he gets his, because he has this menacing sort of evil CEO vibe about him. And also, if you look at the makeup, whoever did the makeup did a fantastic job, but oh my gosh, he's like disgusting looking. Um, which comes into play how disgusting Jeff Jones is later. We'll address that. Um,
Also true.
um, so so anyway, yeah, so they realize all the lights go out or whatever, and then I think after that, at that point, it whatever it is opens up, and they're like, "Does President Clench have wings?" Because apparently the thing has wings, and I didn't really ever get that. But uh, yeah, so you have this creature inside, and it breaks out of the containment field, and then the lights go out, and it's crawling all around, and then I believe a cast member played a maintenance worker in the rafters
Correct.
above on the catwalk, and
Mm-hmm.
and mainly it was just moving a flashlight around, to try
Yeah.
and find you, and then it got them. You see the like a
Yeah.
POV camera or whatever, and you see it like facing them, and then they had nice uh, warm water splatter down from the ceiling,
Yeah.
simulated the person's blood coming down on you,
Yes.
which that's messed up. That's messed
Yeah.
up.
Well, and so I think prior to that point of the cast member being consumed, we is it after the cast member is being consumed or before that we get the actual effects of that alien crawling around on the
I think
on
after
the
the fact.
guests
I
at
think
that
it's
point?
after the fact.
Is it after the fact? Okay,
Because
okay,
I think what happens is it breaks out, goes up, then comes down. Because I watched the footage again,
that's correct. Yeah, you're right.
and I think that again it's basically pitch black in there. I'm just watching a black screen, listening and trying to piece together memories and the sounds of what's happening. But yeah, I think it goes up, then comes down, and then crawls around on
Gotcha.
people, and you hear it, you know, breathing on you, and oh, crazy.
Yeah.
It's the worst kind of
Well,
ASMR.
and I thought it was interesting too. Yeah. Well, and from what I heard, from my understanding as well, is that beyond you feeling the alien like crawling on you, and it's like warm breath and like moist breath is the terminology I've read. Is that also you hear simulated screams from other people across the auditorium? So it's not only like you freaking out, and I'm sure there's actually people like actual guests screaming, but there's also additional screaming added to the speakers because it was one of the first rides that used the spatial audio, so you can actually feel like depth and feel that this alien is crawling around you and on top of you, not just basic speakers just blaring this audio. It actually played with stereo audio, and beyond like the general tension in the room, they even up that tension by adding additional screams of fear and potentially maybe other guests being consumed by this alien.
Yeah, the thing I remember, and it's just in my memory, I didn't see it in the video, or I don't remember seeing it in the video, but for some reason, I remember that at a certain point, you heard a scream, and then a light came down and showed an empty seat, like suggesting that it pulled like a guest out of its seat and ate it. And I remember it so vividly in my mind's eye, but I haven't, from what I did in my research and from what I saw in the video, I didn't see anything. So I don't know if that's sort of a, I'm remembering something wrong, or what's that effect with the Bernstein Bears and the Bearstein Bears? What's that?
Oh, the Mandela
The Mandela effect, yes. So I don't know that. I don't know if it's the TVA stepping in. Yeah. So, but I seem to remember that as well as sort of like, oh my gosh, it killed a guest. Which is a weird. Now that I think about it, that's a weird thing. That like they're really making this difficult for themselves with the complaints and stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, they somehow are able to get the creature back in the containment unit and then blow it up and have it explode or send it away or wherever. And then they work on finding Clench. And I heard, to my understanding, the original version, as you're leaving, shows that Clench made it out okay. Like, he's alive.
Oh, it does.
In the original, in the Phil Hartman version, which I'll refer to the original as Phil Hartman because that's the only version that has him. But in this one, there's no evidence or anything addressed that says he made it out okay. So that's interesting.
Okay. Unsettling, but yeah.
Yeah, but
or maybe it's a good thing because he's just an evil alien that's trying to take over the world with his corporate greed.
Yeah. Which we don't know anything about that.
No, not at all.
Oh, capitalism. Anyway, so then everyone exits out into, I think, the Merchant of Venus, and you have survived Alien Encounter. So a lot of complaints over the years. Again, it didn't technically it only survived 8 years if you don't include the initial version. So then it closed in 2003 and was replaced with Stitch's Great Escape. Stitch's Great Escape, to give an overview there, so you still had the video intro, but it was now with I think fresh animation for using the characters from the Galactic Federation. Then you go into the pre-show that originally had Tim Curry. They replaced him with, and I always forget this guy's name, but it's the guy that plays Bing Bong in Inside Out. Oh, I forget his name. Why am I flaking on that right now?
Richard Kind.
Yes, Richard Kind. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think Skippy is still there, but there's another one as well now. which is weird because all of like the criminals are cute and cuddly in this world. It feels like.
Yeah.
Um, but then yeah, so then there's an announcement that we have like a DEFCON 4 emergency, and you have a like a highest level of prisoner coming in, and
Hmm.
so everyone gets rushed into the theater room, and then Stitch comes, greatly escapes, and there are cannons that fire on him, and he spits on
Uh huh.
people, and then they lock him down, and uh, actually no, he escapes into the park. I forgot that part. He escapes into the park,
Correct.
and you see him
Hmm.
crawling into Cinderella Castle, which breaks the third wall in a weird way. Because
Uh huh.
like it's weird because the building itself is set within the universe of the Galactic Federation, but then when he escapes the building at the end, he escapes to Florida
Hmm.
or Florida, as they call it, and then gets into the castle. So it's acknowledging that Disney
Correct.
World exists, but you still aren't there in the ride. Like it's very weird. It's very muddled in the end. But yeah,
Yeah.
and no
Yeah.
one ever really liked the ride. I feel like no one ever really was a huge fan. I like it was just
Hmm.
there. It felt like.
Yeah. No, and I think well, part of that third wall break was part of the marketing they did for the ride. Remember, they did the whole Stitch. I don't know if it was when the ride initially opened or shortly after the ride opened. They had Stitch like TP the
Yes,
castle at one point in his mischief across the park.
not a great
Um,
plan.
no, and yeah, not good at all. Um, it was fun, I guess, for a couple days. But I think for me, Stitch's Great Escape, it was a way for them to bring in these new characters that are still beloved, and I think were especially beloved in that early 2000s period, 2003, 2004, before the movie came out. And I think that Stitch and Lilo, especially Stitch, can have a ride in the parks. I think Stitch. I love Stitch. I love that movie in general. Um, but again, it was a reuse of what Alien Encounter had there, and so it was a way to make it more kid friendly and not as dark and sinister. Because it's like, oh, like Stitch is just kind of crawling around and like burping in your face and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so I get it. They wanted to use that IP, but I think what it comes down to for me is that why it maybe didn't go over well because Tomorrowland again has lack of identity, has
Oh yeah.
identity crisis, and has had an identity crisis for many years at this point. Um, and so I think it's kind of a disservice to Stitch in that IP was like just like let's just throw him in because we don't want to have this scary alien anymore. Which I understand why they maybe changed some things, and they also had some casting
Oh yeah.
issues um, with Jeffrey Jones.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Should we
So and
go ahead? No,
go
you
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and I think if they wanted to put a new ride into Tomorrowland with Stitch in it, I think they should have done it, and maybe get a new Stitch ride down the road eventually. I think I think that's a probably won't happen, but I think at the time, if they did something different, or if that was if that was like um, the initial use of that ride system, where that kind of that alien breakout, I think that would have been a little bit more well received. But there's already such bad blood around that auditorium and
Mm-hmm.
that show building, just to kind of do the same thing was kind of lackluster at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it was just that it was okay, it's really scary. Let's replace it with the cutesy character that we just got. I think
Uh huh.
it's the same ride just with the cute character, I think is what put a lot of people off towards it.
Hmm.
You're alienating the no pun intended. You're alienating, the people who like the ride, and but then at the same time, you're not. It's still, yeah. It was just a very weird thing. They should have just gutted the building at that point and put, just
Yeah.
a different ride in if they wanted Stitch represented or whatever. Meet the Robinsons for all I care. It's just,
Sure.
and you got to consider that, while the ride is being developed, it's 1993, 1994. The company 10 years later is a completely different company. It's so different. And then, it's just crazy how much, that company changed in 10 years and then 10 years on from there, But, yeah, it really didn't, I think keeping the format the same, it just really didn't serve them well. Now, of course,
Yeah.
Another big reason for them to make that switch was everything about Jeff Jones at the time in 2002, 2003. He was arrested for soliciting a minor and for possession of child pornography, which is a big no-no. Well, I mean, it's a big no-no anyway, but especially for Disney. So they wanted to distance themselves from that, but unfortunately he was such a integral part, the whole plot of the ride hinged on him, so it would cost a lot of money to swap all that around. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it would have been easy, because
Probably pretty easy. Yeah. Just reshoot those scenes with a different actor.
My vote would have been Jeff Goldblum.
Oh,
Yeah.
kind of like the. I just picture him from Thor Ragnarok. Kind of that similar feel.
If it can't be done to excess, it shouldn't be done at all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I think that would be perfect actually. But yeah, that whole since when they transitioned away from Mission to Mars to Stitch, it was a mess from the very beginning.
Oh yeah.
And none of the iterations of that ride were really a fan favorite. I think, like you said, Alien had somewhat of a cult following amongst those that really loved that more intense feel in the parks. But I hate to dock Imagineers for especially Alien Encounter, because it was something different and it was something outside the box. And really what we're calling for today really is that we're wanting new and exciting rides outside the IPs, and that's what they tried to do. And so I hate to criticize them for that ride, because they were trying to do something new and exciting, fight the good fight for the sake of new and exciting attractions. And we talked about earlier, I think it was in the wrong park.
Yep.
If this was an MGM, I think it would totally gone over it in a different way, where putting in the middle of Tomorrowland was the misstep for me at the end of the day. And then I think the reason Stitch happened was they needed to make a quick fix of a ride that was failing and had like wait times of like 5 minutes to walk on. Not because rides weren't like crowd levels weren't high, it's because no one wanted to ride it.
Yeah. Well, that's why, inevitably it was seasonal. So,
Correct. Especially seasonal with Stitch. And for me, I was okay with Stitch being there. I think Stitch is a very endearing character. But I think I'm interested to see what they do going forward with that space, because I think that's going to be a real interesting thing. If they stick with that same theater format, or if they go completely different route and just completely gut that area.
Yeah. Well, the thing, and now this is more getting into like a blue sky corner, but the thing that I always thought would be cool with that kind of ride format Now they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it in Florida because of legal reasons. But um, what I thought might be cool is doing that format of ride, but
Mm-hmm.
with Spider-Man villains, specifically with Venom,
Mm.
or Carnage.
Oh.
I
Uh huh.
or this is kind of ridiculously out there. You set up six different theaters and six different experiences, and it's all like it's different members of the Sinister
Mm.
Six. And this is more for a Marvel
Yeah.
Land, idea. So it's the same kind of ride, but
Uh
then you
huh.
have like, in one theater you have Doctor Octopus breaking out. In another one, you have Venom or Carnage or whatever. And I think something like that would have been fun. But that's
For sure.
definitely out there, and I don't think that would ever happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really just wish that they could give a complete revamp to Tomorrowland and just really
Hmm.
give it some TLC. Like I'm talking like at the level of Fantasyland 83 in Disneyland. Like they just shut the land down and
Hmm.
pretty much, like 60% is just starting from scratch because the
Yeah.
only things I care about there are, way pushed to the back and Sunny Eclipse. If I could have Sunny Eclipse, Space Mountain, People Mover, and uh, Carousel of Progress, just the
Yeah.
rides. I don't care what building they're in. Let's redo the buildings. Let's make them less
Hmm.
whatever this is, whatever that is,
Yeah.
and just really, really try and revamp it. And like I was looking at the old entranceway to Tomorrowland as opposed to the new one that we got like a
Oh
year
yeah.
or two ago.
Hmm.
And it's just I don't know, like there's a bit more personality to the old one, I think. I think it might be interesting if you kind of made it like it was almost like a time, like the entry archway was almost like a time portal where you're like going into the future or something like
Oh
that.
sure.
Have some light effects going on. I know that's a
Hmm.
lot, but just really kind of go all the way with it. There's a fear of commitment, I think, throughout that land, and
No, yeah, for sure.
um, I really wish they would just go do something really bold with it, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's just clunky and ugly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the problem with Tomorrowland right now, especially in Florida for sure, is that there's no cohesive vision, no cohesive
Yeah.
theme. Where I think one of the reasons that Paris really shines in their, well, they call it Discovery Bay, but is that like, it has a very cohesive like steampunk feel, and um, they commit to that. Where right now in our Tomorrowland we have Tomorrowland Transit Authority, which is this idea of this being a spaceport, and Space Mountain, which is kind of like you are in a spaceport going out into space and taking this
Hmm.
ride. Which those two make sense together. They're very cohesive in the same theme.
Hmm.
But then you have Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, which is not even on that theme. Now you have Tron, which is this futuristic on this power grid future simulation where like there's that theme, and then they have the Monsters Inc. IP in there as
Hmm.
well, and then now you have this empty space where Stitch was, and so there's no cohesive theme um, across like the time period or the purpose of this
Yeah.
land, um, and I think you got to commit to one outer space theme or universe where I'm in my mind, if they want to stick with the Tron feel, then do Tron. Like totally trick out the land to have that neon grid
Yeah.
feel, and then have the rides branch out and have that similar feel. And I think if they do that, it makes sense. For one of the rumored replacements for Stitch is Wreck It Ralph, is what I've heard so far. Um, and so if they do like this game grid feel, maybe Wreck-It Ralph makes sense in that space,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make sense with the other attractions in that space. Maybe that does resurrect the theming of Buzz Lightyear, because Buzz Lightyear has his own video game, which we saw in Toy Story 2. So maybe that's the feel they're going for. Is maybe it's this like future virtual reality kind of feel in the space.
Well, possibly. You also have to think next year we're getting the Lightyear movie, apparently. I don't know if that's going to get pushed or what.
That's true.
So that's and that's not he's a toy, that's like his actual, like the real Buzz Lightyear story, and you're going to have Chris Evans playing him, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to be honest.
No, I'm excited for it as well.
Oh yeah, I know you love Buzz. Yeah, I guess we're Buzz. We're more Buzz. Like Buzz is our favorite, right?
Buzz Boys.
Buzz Boys.
Yeah. Buzz Boys.
Okay.
T-shirt.
But yeah, so it's I'm I don't know. I don't like the idea of putting Wreck-It Ralph in there. I love Wreck-It Ralph. I actually really love the first Wreck-It Ralph. I think it's a fantastic film. But I don't know if that's right, if that works really.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. The only thing.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't love it either, but I guess if they're going that route, it makes sense to a degree. But again, I'm not sure what I want there. But if they're going for that game virtual reality feel in Tomorrowland, where the future is virtual, then it maybe makes sense with Tron and things like that. But again, I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, the only place I would just shut up and be like, okay, with Wreck-It Ralph is if they completely revamped the Speedway and made that like Sugar Rush or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, they'd probably have to make it indoors, and I would love it if there were like audio animatronics. That honestly, I would love it if it was sort of like a hybrid of Radiator Springs Raceway and the Tomorrowland Speedway, like sort of a hybrid there, where there were some show scenes, but then you also were racing a little bit with other other people. It would be, I think that would be interesting. But I think that's more of a, and I think there's space for it. I don't know. But
yeah, that's a really good idea, because I was just talking to someone about Tomorrowland Speedway this weekend, and I definitely think that Tomorrowland Speedway either needs to just completely go, or they need to have a really major retheme. Where I think it's a really great idea to have kind of a Sugar Rush theming, because it would be a great transition between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, because like because where the Speedway is at right now, like it's right by Fantasyland, and like you have like that smell and sound from the Speedway, which I think they need to change those to electric cars anyway. But to have like that kind of more fanciful Speedway feel, transitioning to Fantasyland and between Tomorrowland, I think is maybe the way to go.
Yeah.
Which I think I think it would work outdoors as well. It'd be cool if they did a show building for it, but I don't think there's space for it. Just because right now it's butted up with Tron. If they had just like really themed up the outside with like those candy trees, the candy forest, and all that in that space, because it's right there by the teacups and all that. So I think that would be kind of cool.
Well, I think there, then you would kind of get into it being a little reminiscent, and you could even play into this, is have it be reminiscent of the Rock Candy Mountain concept from like, I don't know, like 50, like original Disneyland. because they were thinking about something
Yeah.
like that for as like an intersecting point for all these old Fantasyland
Hmm.
attractions. So you could kind of play off of, it from the Fantasyland stance of it being that Candy Mountain, uh,
Hmm.
concept, but then from the Tomorrowland standpoint, it's that virtual video game world, and honestly, theming wise, you could have it front ended with, a modern aesthetic from one perspective and then the more candy fantastical
Hmm.
perspective from the other. And maybe that's a matter of going not necessarily using that space just as is, but also going a little vertical so you do have a bit more
Hmm.
room to work with. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure logistically how it would work. The spacing of it.
Yeah, I don't know how much room we have.
What could the load area be in that old building where Stitch was? Like you load into your car there, and then you go out. I need to look at the
Yeah.
map, but I think that might be a cool way to you enter into this game world, this game like you enter on the grid in that show building, and then you zoom out onto the
Yeah.
racetrack in like groups of 5 or 6 or whatever, however wide the
Could
lanes are.
you could you theoretically, here's an idea. Theoretically, could you flip it where where you have um the you gut Laugh Floor and
Yeah.
um Buzz Lightyear, do that inside, and then level
Mm,
the raceway. Use that space for something else because you have excuse me, speedway. You have that speedway over there
mm,
now. So then you have all that indoor
mm.
space. Then you can
Yeah.
level the current speedway. Use that space to go vertical with something else. Put in a dark ride. Put in whatever. But go
Sure.
up with a theme in there, and then you can even
Mm,
from there you can even do a more like old fashioned arcade start off. So you go into the arcade, and then go into the ride, and then
yeah.
from there, I don't know, because then you're a little closer I don't know. It's tricky, but you could theoretically make it work.
Yeah. No, yeah, and you could do that because on like where Space Ranger Spin is, I'm pulling up the map on the My Disney Experience app. There's a pretty large swath of land available over there. Um,
Hmm.
you, you just might be you'll be like right next to Main Street if you have like a track out there. So that might mess with the sights and sounds of Main Street, but if they're electrical cars, things like that, it might not be as bad as
Yeah,
we originally thought, or
exactly.
or it could be. Um, and it could open up the space over there by where Tron will be, allow me to walk in front of Tron, which I guess is like the ideal viewing angle is like in front of like you like like that's why it's so beautiful in Shanghai is you could like walk next to that show building
Hmm.
and get immersed with it. Where right now it's kind of like stuck in a corner and you can't really view it very well from Tomorrowland.
No, yeah, yeah. So, um, I mean, there's so much that you can still do with that. There's just so much. There's honestly a ton of possibility you can really do with
For sure.
that. Um, I'd be excited to see. I don't think we're going to see any big changes from Tomorrowland once Tron opens. I think it's going to stay pretty sedimentary for
Yeah.
the next 5 years or so, at least. But and that's a shame. But
Yeah, I
um,
agree.
to get back on topic, Alien Encounter. Um, do you wish you ever got on it, or are you okay with?
Yeah, well, no, yeah. Looking back on it, I wish I'd have at least written it
Mhm.
once. Um, and just have that experience of like what this kind of Eisner era ride was like, because it's so Eisner, it's ridiculous. It's one of the most Eisnerist rides out of all of his tenure. So yeah, and looking back on it, I wish I could have ridden it at least once, or at least chose to rode it at least once. But it's one of those funny kind of footnotes in the history of the company of like, oh, they actually did that, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm not, like I said, I'm not super sad, but I think as a Disney fan, a Disney park fan, a Disney historian in a way, it'd been fun to actually have that firsthand experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, I think, as I separate Eisner into two sort of eras. There was his like hot shot era, and then his synergy like winding down era. You definitely see that later. Like by 1998, I think is when he really started winding down. So I love how ridiculous this is. I love how just all out it. I love the risk. And that is one thing, especially at this point, he was not afraid to do. And I miss that period when Disney was able to take those risks and willing. And yeah, it didn't. Sometimes it works with those risks. Sometimes it didn't. In this case, for me it worked. But I think long term for Disney at large, it didn't work. But that's okay. Because I think you get more out of this and the story of this and the legacy of this than by playing it safe. People remember this. People remember it fondly. Some people don't remember it. So, but that risk was taken. I don't think you're going to remember, Princess Fairy Tale Hall, which I think was a very play it safe thing.
No. No, and it was an attempt at an original story. It was an attempt at original characters, which is something that a lot of us in the parks community want, is original characters. It's just unfortunate that those characters were attached to such an infamous attraction. I still think like Skippy is still a beloved character.
I'm getting a Skippy stuffed animal. By the time the show is over, like by the time we finish, not this episode, but by the time the show is over, I'm going to have a Skippy.
I wish you the best in that endeavor, and it's probably easier to get a Skippy doll versus one of the Splash Mountain stuffed animals right now.
Oh
yeah. But yeah, and Skippy and Tom or Sir, I think, are also some iconic original characters. Yeah. Which I think those characters are much more beloved than like the Clench characters and those engineers on that ride. So I hope they find themselves back in the parks at some point. Maybe they'll find their way into the collector's vault or collector's room in California Adventure. So maybe we'll see them there. Fun fact! I was doing some research, and I know that on the collector's desk in Mission Breakout, there's an excess invoice on his desk, which is really
I
cool.
love that so much. Cool. And they kept excess in the legacy of the park still exists. I would love, and we'll get into this more, I think, in a couple episodes, like next month. But I would love if excess, if they ever got around to a Space Mountain or some, a space attraction based film, if Excess Tech was the villain of that, of the film or of that universe. I would love that. Even if they did like a Disney Plus series, because I always thought it'd be cool if they did because my pitch for a Space Mountain film series would be more episodical. on Disney Plus, and like the idea is, they're journeying through space to a specific place they have to get, and in one episode they could run into like Captain EO, and then on another one they answer like a distress signal on a ship, and it's Alien Encounter basically, but maybe throughout excess tech back on Earth, or wherever is trying to sabotage their mission, and stuff like that. So I really, so I'd love to see the legacy of that still existing on. So it's so cool to see it still referenced on Mission Breakout. So I guess they technically exist in the Marvel universe as well, technically.
That's true.
It's its own timeline.
That's true. Yeah. No, yeah, and I think excess tech kind of plays the role of, by and large, in this kind of potentially live action theme park attraction universe.
Well,
I think it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think to kind of tie it back to Alien, they're sort of like the Wayland Industries. I saw Prometheus in theaters and I passed out. So I'm not really the most in depth on the whole Alien.
I actually really enjoyed Prometheus, but I'm a big Alien fan.
I'm very squeamish. So.
Well, the first two movies are great, and then the movies after that are obviously trash. But Prometheus was an okay installment into the modern, or at least bringing Alien back into the modern zeitgeist. Yeah. But it wasn't the most well perceived movie, but I still think it fit that Alien feel in that universe. But
yeah. Well, buddy, if you check on your My Disney app, I think we have a fast pass coming on. We actually got to get over to the Tiki Room. Do they use fast pass for that? I don't know. Anyway, I think it's time. With all we've covered, I think it's time to get going. But we sure have enjoyed this time with you out there, listeners. If you want more Hubgrass in your life, you can find us separately at Matt Arterberry and Matt and Mary Kate on YouTube for Matt. And then if you're looking for me, you can find me at Unofficial Disney CEO on TikTok. Or, of course, you can, if you're just looking for us together, if you want that package deal, you can find us at On the Hubgrass Pod on Instagram, where we post new content regularly. Speaking of new content, I think, Matt, you had something you wanted to mention with our Patreon really quick before we got going.
Yeah, as we finish up here, we debuted our Patreon a few episodes ago. Since then, we've made some updates. We've added a new tier, and also taken away a couple tiers to make it a little more concise and easy for all of you to use. So if you want to support us on Patreon and get some exclusive content from us and some exclusive prizes, make sure you hop over there to patreon.com/onthehubgrass if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis to help us expand our show and also bring more fun and exciting content to all of you.
Yeah, it was some drastic changes. Phil Hartman was originally there, and we swapped in Tim Curry as well. It was kind of weird. No, but yes, of course, if you like what we do and you want to help us make this show better, because we have a lot of stuff we're going to be doing in the months to come, we're very excited about. Please consider checking out that Patreon. But until next time, remember, there's a great, big, beautiful podcast, and it's just a stream away. We'll see you on the Hubgrass, folks. But was it a bunny or what?